Hello and welcome back. Sean here, Mountains Garage, Saturday morning edition. I meant to shoot this video the last couple days, but things were kind of busy. So here we are. Today's topic is 4L80E tools, and with or without them, you'll be able to successfully overhaul your 4L80E. I say with or without because for years and years, decades even, I've been working on them and I didn't always have much beyond general hand tools. But in subsequent years, having the right tools that are called out in the manual, this is the most important tool you can have for the transmission, is information. But all the Kentmore J tools, that some of these actually are and some are copies, are called out in here section by section when you're working on it. You can do it without it, and I did in a lot of cases right up until recently, till I splurged, and as I started working on more of them, decided, you know what, it's nice to have, and in some cases the same ones that I use and already had for the Turbo 400. So there's going to be comparisons throughout the video with the Turbo 400 because they are related. So unlike the Turbo 400, that in the mid 70s only went half metric, the threaded holes, the 4L80E is all metric. So you'll need metric sockets and your normal array of screwdrivers and picks and pliers and hammers and whatever else you typically use for general hand tools to bash something apart and put it back together. The first problem you're going to encounter is getting the front pump removed. It's a much thicker, heavier piece. They did not give you threaded holes for a slide hammer like the Turbo 400 has. And the splines on the stator shaft, a 400 has a little bit of spline and then it necks down and just a hollow, thin bare tube, if you will, that the pump puller can get underneath and pull. A 4L80E is splined all the way down. So your only hope is a clamp-on style like this. If you're careful, maybe put a rag around the splines, go as low as possible. This will assist you, and at least with the 4L80E, you can actually pry gently with two screwdrivers, on both sides of the pump from inside the pan. With a 400, you can only get on one side really good. 4L80E, you got a clear shot to both sides. So I've never not got one out, but again, it's a beast of a pump, and don't drop it on your foot. The only other lifting type thing that would be handy to have, and again, you don't need it. For years, I laid the transmission horizontal and pulled the whole lower unit out like a baby. But since I got this rig, same one I use in the Turbo 400, snaps onto the intermediate or main shaft, and you can pull the whole lower unit out in one piece, which makes it a lot easier to handle, even though it's heavy-ish. Again, same tool, shared with the Turbo 400. I just brought it over here because it also works with the 4L80E. So you got it all blown apart, and you need to service all the lip seals and seals inside the transmission. So kind of laid them out in order. The first one are the big three over here. This is for the fourth clutch. It is a simple rig. It's an aluminum shell. You can air check it just by blowing in the bowl hole when it's assembled with all the clutches right on the bench, or put it in the transmission and do the same thing. So it's easy to check if you messed it up. And for years I did it with a traditional feeler gauge style lip seal tool, being really careful to, lots of lube and go around and around and around. It's the simplest rig that takes the longest to put together, probably the hardest part of the transmission. Now, I splurged, eBay, these are copies, but man, these are all steel, and these three pieces are lip seal installers for the fourth clutch. So when we do one, we'll actually, do it together, show you what it's all about, but that's what these three giant pieces are for, and they work excellent. continuing with the overdrive section of the 4L80E, these are, this is a Teflon seal expander. The input shaft has one-piece seals. They're not scarf cut. They are one piece. So you wonder how you're going to get them off and on. In the past, I would, pry them off and pry the new ones on, and then just cut a piece of soda bottle and some hose clamps and put it around it. And also, the corresponding parts, let me get an input shaft and it'll make more sense. Hang on. And we're back. It's been like an hour, but that's okay. I had a few interruptions. So the input shaft has a small set of Teflon rings and a large set. And once you have them on the shaft and sized properly, you have to stretch them to get them over the shaft. And then you got to shrink them back up. And believe it or not, it works pretty well. I used to warm them up in my hand. I don't even do that anymore. I just pick the old ones off. Before I had fancy tools, again, I would stretch them back on, use hose clamps and plastic soda bottle. But now, I bought this 3-piece set on eBay. And this tapered piece, you would think it would work like, sticking it on the end, but not really. It's more just for sizing the seal on the bench. So I kind of push it down, keeping it square. You don't want to roll it. And you can stretch it out enough that it'll kind of sit on the end of the shaft. I like to take a long pick, just put it alongside, through the seal, but not hurting it. And this will assist me in working the seal down into the groove without stretching it any more than you have to. And you go ahead and put both of them on. And when they are square and they spin like they're supposed to, but they're just too big at this point, there's a large tapered end and then a straighter portion. But you gently work it over the seal. I do it in sight, yeah. Actually, that goes, this is already sized, so there's no restriction. So that goes right over. And then if you're really tricked, this isn't tapered on this end, but when they're correct, it'll go over either end. The parts that the seals go into, if you actually use the transmission parts, they have a small taper, and if you're careful, if you don't have the sizing tools, you can use the actual hard parts where these seals go into to accomplish the same thing. But same with the big end, there's a big and little taper. So you start with the big taper, and then after letting it sit for a few minutes, I like to put the small taper end on, work it over there, and then just let it sit for however long you deem necessary. At least a minute, overnight, certainly won't hurt, but that's what that's all about. This whole sizing tool set on eBay, this is not Kent Moore, right around $40. And somebody spent a lot of time machining that. It's actually quite nice. The last tool related to the overdrive section of the 4L80E is, this is the inner lip seal protector for the overrun clutch. That is the small set of clutches I mentioned help hold the power transfer in D3, D2, and D1, whereas in D4, it's just the overrun clutch. The one-way clutch has to hold all the power. So that has a small piston, and this is the inner lip seal installer. I just got it. I've always done it without any special tools, but I look forward to using that. It's a genuine Kent Moore. The J numbers are all in the book, and even when you Google the J numbers, the copycat tools will show up as well, so there's that. Now moving on down, the forward clutch drum internally takes the same lip seal protectors as the Turbo 400 and as the direct clutch drum for both. So I had actually already had this for the direct clutch drum, and then I saw it listed, bought it one night and realized it's the same one I have, and the one I'll be using on my Turbo 400 for years is actually the one called out in the 4L80E manual. But they're the same size and they work just fine. So these two, I absolutely love. I use them all the time. It just makes it seconds. Literally, you lube it up, grab a hold of it, and twist it in. And just like that, you don't tear the seals. It only takes a second. It's well worth the $30 or $40 I paid for them. I found them on eBay. Again, the J-Tool number, the Genuine Kent Moore, is in the book in both the Turbo 400 manual and the 480E manual. Same story on the center support. That's for the center seal, lip wizard around the outside, or your finger, whatever you want to use. That's easy to do anyway, but way easier with the inner lip seal protector. I wish, and I've seen aluminum ones, I could make one myself. This is plastic, and I use it so much, and I'm really careful with it. It'll probably still last, forever, but this is actually steel, and I wish that was steel. So, last tool here on the bench, excuse me, on the bench anyway, is this tool was sent to me by my buddy John, and it's a 1/2-inch pipe nipple with a nut welded on it, but your filter seal, which drives up into the case, is difficult to remove, especially in the vehicle, especially without damaging the case. And if you damage the case and your filter is sucking air, well, it's not going to be a good situation. This threads right into the old seal, and then you just kind of pop it right out of there. So simple, so slick, brilliant. I love tools that are, well thought out. And why didn't I think of that myself? Because for years I threaded bolts into it, and that worked, but this is a much better fit. I probably already mentioned, but the greatest tool is information, and with the $20, $30 book, whatever these cost these days, a lot of great information in there. I find it interesting. The Turbo 400 manual, it may have 4 or 5 pages. I could go look at it, but for sake of argument, 4 or 5 pages of diagnostics. The 480E has 15 pages of diagnostics, because there's more things controlling stuff and more areas for things to go wrong compared to the old mechanical 3-speed transmission. Now you've got other factors involved. So they do a good job walking you through by symptom, and when you have a problem, it's a good place to start. If you have the luxury of having a running vehicle with the transmission in it, if it's just being brought to you while you got to strip it apart and make your own conclusions, combined with what you might have been told when you're either buying the core or talking to whoever owns the transmission. So that's that. So hey, it's Saturday morning. I have been delayed. I haven't had breakfast yet even, so I'm going to go do that, and hope you're enjoying your weekend here in the Northeast. I think a little rain this afternoon, and then we start a stretch of weather that's sunny and 70 degrees, and you know how much I love that. Lower humidity. For the past few weeks, I guess the whole country's been really hot, and we're no exception. Hot for us is, approaching 90 with higher humidity levels, which I understand in some places in the country that would be a relief. So I've always counted my blessings. Yesterday I went to visit my mother in the morning, and then she lives a stone's throw from Fort William, so I actually went and bought a sandwich and parked up there. It overlooks Casco Bay. Also the site of Portland Headlight, probably the most photographed lighthouse anywhere. So beautiful day, tons of people walking around. It was 90 degrees out even on the ocean, so I didn't know how good I had it growing up a stone's throw from the ocean, because in the summertime it's usually 10 to 15 degrees cooler than inland, and in the wintertime about the same direction warmer. So when I moved inland 25 miles, I learned the difference. And we get a lot more snow, a lot more cold, and a lot more heat, but I'm in the middle of the woods. So that to me is a bonus. All right, have a great weekend. Talk to you soon.